How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I am an avid herpetologist, and yes, that video title is not clickbait. I finally had some time off of work where I was able to attend an Evo Cup this last weekend, and wouldn't you know it, luck would have it, we managed to take away first place with our purple base Machinedramon. Now, we have a lot that we need to talk about. I was hoping to get this video up a little bit sooner, honestly, before the ban list announcement, which was this morning as of the filming of this video. But as fate would have it, my laptop decided to black screen on me, and unfortunately, this week it has been in the repair shop. Thankfully, I am back up and running, able to make my deck profile video, but honestly, it kind of worked out, since along with our ban list restriction update that we got this morning, originally was supposed to be just for the Japanese format, it's actually going to get put into effect for the English version of the game as well. So the changes that we kind of assumed were going to be coming actually are going to affect us here in the US, so honestly, we can kind of add that to our profile today, and I can talk a little bit about it, since we are running purple-based Machinedramon, we are playing Ukkomon, and the promo copy of Ukkomon has officially been hit to a single copy as of August 31st. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about how we can properly replace that, because honestly, I don't think it's going to affect the list too terribly much. It's pretty easy to replace in with a different card. We'll get to that, but one other thing before we do get into the deck profile, this profile is going to be extra special today because this is actually the 100th video that I have uploaded to the Avid Herpetologist channel. Starting all the way back 2 years ago with my second place in a store championship Machinedramon deck profile. Today we are going to bring things full circle, my 100th video. I wanted to do something special, and I figured what is more special than a first place tournament win with the same deck that I've been playing since the beginning of this channel, my boy Machinedramon. But one quick reminder before we do get into it, if you're interested in picking up any of the cards from today's video, feel free to use my TCG Player affiliate link in the description below. By clicking that link, it's going to redirect you to the TCG Player website where you can buy all of the cards you are going to buy anyways. You will not spend any additional money, but by using that link, you're going to help me get a little bit of a commission off the cards that you buy, so you can help me keep the lights on while continuing to enjoy those hobbies that we share together. With that, guys, I know we've got quite a bit to talk about. We're going to do things a little bit different with today's deck profile, where we're going to talk a little bit more about reasonings rather than the specific cards themselves, and go over my particular version of purple-based Machinedramon and the reasons for my ratios. With that out of the way, guys, let's go ahead and get into it. Don't want to keep you guys waiting any longer. Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started here. So, with purple-based Machinedramon, generally speaking, you're going to be running a total of 5 eggs. The thing with Ukkomon, and we are going to be talking quite a bit about Ukkomon because it kind of goes hand in hand with our eggs here, it fundamentally kind of breaks the mechanics of the game. That's honestly why Ukkomon needed to get banned. Specifically, the 5 eggs we're going to be playing for our Machinedramon list are going to be 4 copies of Demimeramon from BT15 and a single copy of Demimeramon from BT3. Now, you'll probably seen quite a few lists online playing a full 8 copies of Ukkomon that are, instead of running Demimera, going to be running BT14 Koromon. Basically, Koromon and Demimera kind of trade off with their benefits, where you can either get a free draw from checking security, which is basically card advantage, or you can get card filtering on deletion anytime your thing would be deleted. It honestly kind of depends. I actually do think there's benefits and negatives to both, in such a sense that if your opponent has a blocker, Koromon is not necessarily going to get you your value, but Demimeramon always will. So you're kind of trading in that regard. Now, with the Ukkomon promo getting banned and having to most likely swap in some purple rookies, I do think this is going to be kind of the de facto build going forward, since Demimera here is going to be kind of our generic filler egg, but it is almost strictly worse than our primary egg, which is going to be BT15 Demimera. Now, one of Machinedramon's biggest limitations is it doesn't really have a dedicated egg for itself. It's for that reason that over the years we've seen, blue base with Vmon getting us some draw aggression off of a jamming attacker. We've seen the red base Giomon tech where you can draw 2 cards on attack. Demimeramon is basically the newest version of that, and it basically looks to abuse not only the disgusting advantage that Ukkomon brings, but an effect that Machinedramon has also been making use of since its inception as well. This Demimeramon lets you trash a level 5 or higher card in your hand in order to draw 2. So basically you just want to promote an Ukkomon, hatch an egg, crash it into your opponent's security. If it dies, trash a level 5, draw 2 fresh cards, and your whole advantage engine just kind of gets going right off the bat. So with that being said, we might as well just go ahead and start talking about our Ukkomons, because realistically, Ukkomon is the reason, outside of the egg, that you want to be playing purple base. Now, for my particular list, I am playing a full 8 copies of Ukko. This is going to include, of course, our 4 copies of BT16 and our 4 copies of the promo. Now, both of our Ukkomon share the effect where when they are pushed forward, they are going to do something while also hatching an egg. In our case of our promo, obviously, it's going to give us consistency, which Machinedramon is desperately in need of. The fact that it grabs any Digimon or any Tamer lets us basically grab whatever consistency pieces that we need. Of course, then we're just going to crash it and draw our cards. We also have our other Ukkomon, which just gains us memory, which don't really need much of an explanation. There is a reason that this card is the one that got limited to a single copy. Now, the reason Ukkomon is so insane, and Machinedramon in particular, is because you can kind of play it in a couple of different ways, depending on how your opponent is going to be playing their deck, and it honestly encourages a playstyle Machinedramon is already trying to encourage. Basically, the thing with Ukkomon is you kind of have to answer this as soon as possible. So by forcing your opponent to be proactive and forcing them to either leave the raising area or make their plays first, it's basically opening the door for the massive crackback turns that Machinedramon is known for making. Machinedramon very much wants to be able to push a primary game plan and then blitz in Machinedramon in response to your opponent kind of answering your plan A. And, I mean, Ukkomon is just serving that role, basically. Like, it's the rookie that you can easily basically, provide this disgusting value engine that your opponent has to interact with, or they just get buried by the advantage. And if they do answer it and they decide to make the first move, now they've opened themselves up where we can attack the heavy mobile Digimon, blitz into Machinedramon, and massively punish them for it. So Ukkomon basically forcing our opponents to make the first real play. That's why it's, so disgusting in Machinedramon in particular. Obviously, a lot of the decks that play Ukkomon are playing it for different reasons, but that's one of the big reasons it's such a good fit for Machine in particular. Now, as mentioned, this Ukkomon is getting hit to a single copy. So we're basically going to be stuck with a total of 5 copies of Ukkomon. And if you want to keep these exact same ratios, a very easy swap in is just swapping these Ukkos for copies of Tapirmon. Tapirmon has a simple on deletion to just draw you a card, so you basically just pair that with the other Demimera effects, crash your Tapirmons into your opponent's security, and obviously get to draw a bunch of free cards off of that. So it's not going to be quite as aggressive, being able to fundamentally skip, as I mentioned, the game mechanic of hatching versus promoting. That is honestly why Ukkomon is so disgusting. As much as people like to talk about Ukko, I feel like they tend to talk about the memory advantage and consistency, but very rarely do I hear people talking about just how gross the effect to hatch a free egg is. The raising area is very much balanced from like a mechanical standpoint in the sense that you're supposed to trade pushing forward and hatching an egg. When you're doing both every single turn, you're basically skipping an entire turn that your opponent, who is not playing Ukkomon, now has to do. It basically gives you a whole leg up. And the fact that Ukkomon is also gaining you incremental advantage on top of that, basically, as I mentioned, if you want to throw your Ukkomons into security, you can. But I've also had some people in my Discord ask about how to play Ukkomon in purple base, and leaving Ukkomon up for a full turn and basically threatening a second Ukkomon, or I guess eventually a Tapirmon in the raising area, again is basically threatening your opponent. Are you going to be super aggressive and do something to get rid of Ukkomon early, or are you going to let me promote a second rookie and recycle the Ukkomon's value a second time? So Ukkomon as a whole, like I said, it fits like a glove in Machinedramon. It is going to be a little unfortunate not being able to have that extra push forward aggression on quite as many of our first turns, but I do think Tapirmon will slot in just fine and fill the role that Ukkomon is going to be leaving behind. Now, as far as other rookies in the deck, I am choosing to play 3 copies of EX1 Hagurumon, and I'm also going to be playing 2 copies of Raremon in the champion slot. These cards are basically just additional filter power, which obviously Ukkomon does pretty well, but like Machinedramon can always use more of that, right? Especially since we are going to be playing something that is not black base. If we want to be playing Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon, or even something like our Supreme Connection, we need a black source to do that. So Hagurumon is going to be filling the role rather than something like, for instance, Sistermon Blanc, which is still fantastic, like it's still usable in the deck, but Hagurumon, I think, is still just as fine and does give us that black source. So we're going to be playing 3 copies of Haguru and 2 copies of Raremon. The reason we're playing the split here is just because, of course, being able to play Haguru and then Digivolve on top of it, it's basically just an extra card, and it lets us play the Raremon for slightly cheaper. But hard playing Raremon for 4, obviously fine. We've talked a lot about Raremon plenty in our previous deck video, so we don't need to beat that card to death. Let's go ahead and get into our level 5s. Now, since we are playing the egg alongside, our other trash effects and our Analogman, we need a lot of 5s, and I am playing 17 in this list, so we have quite a few. Starting off, we are playing our two different variations of Blocker Reboot. I'm playing BT11 Gigadramon and the Structure Deck Andromon for my particular Reboot Inherits. Gigadramon has jamming while in play. This one on Digivolve will de-Digivolve an opponent's body. Since we are playing a lot of cards that we want to see that aren't necessarily level 6 machines right now, I've opted to take out MetalTyrannomon, and I'm, spoiler, not playing EX1 Andromon either, because we're not really Digivolving super often. We only have 2 copies of Raremon to Digivolve over, so we have one Reboot and Inherit that really doesn't do anything on Digivolve. It's just something we can play out. And the other one is a de-Digivolve effect because, quite frankly, you know, setting our opponent back is always helpful. So we're opting for that over the MetalTyrannomon in this list because draw power, frankly, it's not something we're lacking on. For blockers, we're obviously playing our EX4 MetalTyranno, and we are playing Structure Deck Megadramon. Now, again, I was not expecting to come back to this card, but not going to really be Digivolving into Andromon super often, so I opted for the generic blocker inheritable rather than conditional, just in case the Digivolve happens to hit our stack. So, you know, 2 copies of Blocker Reboot. It is the tried and true combination that Machinedramon is known for, helps us be super aggressive while also staying super defensive. And I'm going to be playing a total of 3 on-attack destruction effects. Now, even though Numamon is getting hit, it is still going to be a viable deck, I think, in the format moving forward. And honestly, even if it's not, there are quite a few decks in the format that are still going to be playing quite a few bodies out on the board that we kind of need to be able to keep in check. So all totaled, like I said, I'm going to be playing a total of 3. Specifically, we do still play our MetalMamemon. It has that on Digivolve still, but it is kind of an irreplaceable inheritable. Popping something 5 or less lets us hit aces. I'm playing a single copy of Megadramon. There are certain decks where DP is going to be the lower factor instead of play cost. Think things like Diaboromon, spamming Diaboromon tokens. This can actually hit those. And we are still playing, of course, our vital copy of BT9 Megadramon. This is going to be that Tamer removal that is still, of course, super helpful and lets us hit opposing rookies. When we are blitzing in our Machinedramons, we want to have, as I mentioned, a big swing turn. So having 3 different destruction effects that we can attach under our Machinedramon that'll help us clear off the opponent's board, super nice to have. So I'm going to be playing these 3 different ones. As I mentioned, they each kind of have their own niche, things that they want to target, and combining them together can basically take a board from 4 bodies down to 0 if you get all 3 of these and get to swing over something. So these are going to be our destruction effects. We are still, of course, playing our 2 copies of BT8 MetalGreymon, letting us attack unsuspended Digimon. We have our single copy of BT15 Megadramon for that de-Digivolve on attack effect. We have 3 buffs in the form of our MetalGreymon from BT1, Megadramon from BT6, and on the opponent's turn we have Gigadramon from BT6. Now, these 2 are on borrowed time. We now know officially that we have a new set coming out with hybrid support with a new Daipenmon as well as a new Jet Sylphimon that give us a plus 2,000 buff on both turns, which is pretty cool. Definitely glad to finally have that in Machinedramon to give us a little bit of a quality of life upgrade. That'll make our stacks way scarier, so definitely looking forward to that. But for the time being, these are the 3 buffs that you will generally see in your Machinedramon lists. We are playing our 2 security trash effects, MetalTyrannomon and Rapidmon. Obviously, we want to be playing very much a control game, so being able to tuck these 2 into our sources, swing over a body, we are still going to be aggressing the opposing security while we are controlling the board state. But just in case our opponent is not playing anything to swing into, we do still have our 2 extra security checks in the form of Structure Deck MetalGreymon and EX1 Megadramon, making sure that no matter what we are seeing, no matter what we are playing against, we will shred through our opponent's security. And since we are, as I mentioned, playing a very aggressive egg base with our Ukkomons, raising, hatching, it basically gives us the opportunity to chip until we are ready to blitz in, shred whatever's left, and then swing for game. So very, very aggressive on the lower end. The upper end probably won't surprise anybody. We are still playing our full 4 copies of EX1 Machinedramon. Machinedramon having that DP reduction protection is still, of course, basically irreplaceable. With that being said, though, since both Yellow Vaccine and Numamon have both received hits this format, we're going to kind of need to see how the format shapes up in regards to whether or not these Machinedramon are going to stay at 4, or we potentially cut a copy for the newer version of BT17 Chaosdramon. Chaosdramon definitely does have some potential. I'm definitely going to be trying it out as I kind of experiment with Black Base. I know you guys are probably going to want to know how I feel about Collision in Machinedramon, and I do think it has some really cool potential. And in a Black Base, I think swapping one of these for a copy of Chaosdramon that can be blitzed or digivolved into without spending too much memory probably going to be preferable. So I do expect to be at least, the very least, trying out that Chaosdramon to see how it does. But in this last format, especially in a purple base where we are not Digivolving, 4 copies of Machinedramon is a must, where even if we are not able to blitz in Machinedramon and we need to play it from our hand, we obviously don't want to be spending a ton of memory just hard playing like a Chaosdramon, for instance. So Machinedramon coming down for, obviously like a cost of 7, even if we don't have Supreme Connection, at least lets us make our plays without forfeiting a ton of memory to die on Crackback 2. We do still have our 3 copies of Chaosdramon, great to follow up a Machinedramon with. We have our 2 copies of Chaosdramon X-Antibody. This is pretty much your ratio that you're going to see just about every Machinedramon list running. Putting a Chaosdramon X over a Machinedramon is pretty much game over for a lot of decks in the meta still. A lot of decks that are relying on like DP reduction effects, and honestly just Magnamon X in general, doesn't really have an answer to these unless they get lucky and see a, like, for instance, Magnamon structure deck promo in security so they can de-digivolve. So, like, there's just nothing they can really do to out these kind of cards, and Chaosdramon in general is just a phenomenal card. Chaosdramon X being able to keep tucking sources at least gives us the opportunity to follow up our initial plays. It's so satisfying. Like, I really just love this deck, and these level 6s are why. I cannot wait for the alternate art of Chaos X to hit in December. We do still, of course, have our 4 copies of Analogman, and since we are on purple base, you know for a fact we are still playing 2 copies of Tai. Tai is basically going to not only serve as that really vital DP buff to help us get over things like Tyrant Kabuterimon, or again, letting our Machinedramons get over Magnamon X if they haven't triggered their effect yet, but it's also, again, another black source. We really are kind of reliant on Attack of the Heavy Mobile in this deck, and we can't play it if we don't have a black source. So having a total of 6 black Tamers will hopefully let us see the black source that we need in order to do our blitz option more often. So 4 Analog and 2 Tai is going to do us there. I'm still playing a total of 2 copies of Supreme Connection. I do still think this card is super useful, but again, without a black base, we don't really want to be playing too many cards that obviously, we can't play right on turn 1. So like, without the egg to be able to play this instantly, I don't think more than 2 is really necessary, but it is still good enough that I think 2 is fine. If they check in security, it's still a phenomenal card to set up our follow-up turn. Obviously, playing Machinedramon for only 4 is disgusting. So yeah, 2 copies of Supreme Connection, no more, no less. And I am playing a total of 3 copies of Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon. Like I said, this is a deck that is pretty reliant on the ability to blitz in Machinedramon for our big plays. With Ukkomon as our lower end, we don't really have the capacity to build up into a different play. So blitzing in to actually make sure our response turns, our crackback turns, do something impactful, you kind of need it. Like, you really shouldn't play less than 3 attack, in my personal opinion. I think 4 is probably too many. I think I've seen a few lists online that are experimenting with 4. I feel like every time I go up to 4, it ends up being too many. I just see them when I don't want to. But 3 feels just about right. If you have less than 3 and, like, 1 is in security, you can be in trouble. There's just a lot of like different things you have to kind of consider with Attack of the Heavy Mobile, but it is very much a linchpin card that you kind of need in order to do well. You got to kind of be careful. Obviously, Ukkomon's search effect, start of turn, lets you look at your top 3, but you can only add a Digimon or Tamer, which is just about everything except for these 5 cards. So if you're like really hurting for this, you just kind of got to be careful with how you use your Ukkomons. But yeah, with the ban list changes coming into effect, we're very much going to have to see kind of how this deck shapes up with the format, because the rest of the format is going to very much be in a state of flux. Since we are going to be getting this ban list update before we get our next set, I think MetalDramon is probably going to be top dog for a little bit, which is definitely not good for Machinedramon. MetalDramon just kind of hard counters what Machine wants to be doing. It doesn't mean the matchup is unwinnable, but it's definitely an uphill battle. Once the next EX set does hit and we get the Shoto Mother D Reaper combo, MetalDramon is going to be forced to play a little more honest, because they definitely are a deck that has a harder time getting over that blocker combo. Other than that, I mean, think about what the big decks are. Still are going to be things like Numemon, Ancient Garurumon, Magnamon X with the Vmon base. These are all decks that Machinedramon does still very much have a pretty positive matchup into. You're going to have to be careful with Ancient Garuru. Obviously, they're a pretty fast deck, so you got to make sure that we are outpacing them, but they're also losing access not only to Ukkomon, but also to Hammer Spark now. So being only able to run a single copy of Hammer Spark and only a single promo Ukko means they are not going to be able to make massive memory plays in the same way. it kind of helps slow them down. And honestly, I don't think it nearly slows down Machinedramon quite as much. I don't, like I said, losing the 3 Ukko slows us down a bit, but nowhere near some of these other decks that kind of relied on it quite as much. I really think that the BT16 Ukko is way better for Machine than the promo is. Promo is still good, but I think this Ukko gives us the kind of niche linchpin that we needed, more so than the promo did. I'm still going to run my single copy of the promo if I stick with purple base, but I think having the 4 copies of BT16 and 1 Ukko will probably be fine. I think purple is still probably going to be a perfectly viable way to play Machinedramon, like I mentioned. Just kind of slot in Tapirmons for the missing Ukkos. You'll be good. Don't worry about it too terribly much. Like I said, though, I will be experimenting with black base. That'll probably be my next Machinedramon deck profile, just because I don't think this list changes too much with the implement of the next EX set. But if you guys have any questions about Machinedramon or how to play it in the new format, feel free to leave a comment down below or hop in my Discord. Again, link for my Discord is always in the description of my videos. My community is always chatting Machinedramon toolboxing, so they'll be able to give you some advice if I don't have an answer to your particular question. But with that, guys, I hope you have enjoyed this deck profile, kind of getting back to the roots of the channel. My 100th video, it is so cool being able to say that I've uploaded a full 100 videos to this channel. Here's to the next 100, guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Once again, I am an avid herpetologist. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.